Okay, it says that we're now being live streamed, which means we'll all soon be becoming hosts again.
Hey there.
There's Mr. Boy.
Hi, Eddie.
Hey, how are y'all?
Really good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Thank you again for being here.
Sure. Sure, I'll see y'all next week.
All right, it looks like it's 4:30. Y'all want to go ahead and get this thing rolling?
I've got to once I am made host again, I've got to begin the webinar and record to the cloud. I'm sorry. A little bit. Okay, now I can do that. And now, Mr. White, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, well,
Start the webinar.
Are we still in practice session?
Here we go.
yes, we are. There we go. Webinar has started. Okay, let's get going. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Well, actually, let me make sure we got some attendees to pay attention to what we're saying here. We have a few.
Coming slowly.
Well, I'll go ahead. People are used to this part, but good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 8th, 2021 BAR Large Virtual Meeting. My name is Jay White, and I'll be serving as chair this afternoon until John Robinson can join us, or until I have to leave around 6 p.m. The other board members that are present this afternoon are John Robinson, he'll be joining in a moment, Luda Subchuck, James Metters, and Eddie Bello is serving as an alternate this evening. City staff present are Tori Parrish and Lawrence Courtney. And the order of the meeting will be as follows. There'll be an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. Then an applicant presentation, 10 minutes or a time limit as determined by the chair, and any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state your name for the record. Any persons affiliated with the project, owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., should speak during this portion rather than during public comment. Written public comments. Written comments are due by noon the business day before the meeting and transmitted to the board members as soon as possible thereafter. Unless determined by the chair to the contrary, written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting since they've been distributed to the board. Live public comment is a 2-minute time limit per person or as determined by the chair. And the applicant in this case does not respond to the comments made during public comment. Again, for all those speaking, please clearly state your name and address for the record. This will be followed by city staff comments and recommendation, and then a 5-minute period for applicant response or clarification to public comment and or city staff comments. This will be followed by board discussion and a vote. The applicant presentation and public comment opportunities would now be closed, and the applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by notifying me how everyone may via Zoom, but otherwise you can only speak if asked a direct question by a board member. All right, item number 6, the MUSC cogeneration plant has been withdrawn by the applicant, and John Robinson will be recusing for item number 10. Remember to turn off all cell phones and other distracting devices, and please limit your comments to architecture only. Any comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, or livability concerns such as trash, noise, and mayhem are not the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. All right, so these protocols have been in place now for well over a year, so I'm just going to let this slide linger, and those who wish to read it may, but I'm not going to recite it since it's seared into our brains at this point. Okay, next slide. Okay, next. And next. And next. All right, now we're off to the races. Ms. Parrish.
Right. Agenda item number 1 is 529 King Street. This is an extension request, first 1-year extension of final approval for construction of a mixed-use building to include retail and hotel uses. This was originally granted January 8th, 2020. Cannon LA Borough Neighborhood, Heights District 4, Old and Historic District. And this one we've got Mr. Steve Ramos for. Steve, it's all yours.
Well, I think I can be brief. We are just asking for a 1-year extension, and believe it or not, we are probably just a couple weeks away from having the building permit for this project. It sat during COVID for probably some obvious reasons, but we are about 95% away through the permitting process. In fact, we have final details to staff approval, but that does not qualify as an extension. Thus, we are here asking for what I believe to be our final 1-year extension. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move for approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a
I
second?
didn't even get my comment.
Well, you sent it before, unless it's different. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'll call the roll. Ms. Subject, how do you vote?
I'm muted. Yay, in favor?
Okay. Mr. Bello, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yay in favor.
And I vote the same. It passes 4-0.
Thank you.
All right, item number 2 is another extension. This is for 72 North Market, 182 Church, Anson, and Pinckney Streets. The request is the first 1-year extension of conceptual approval with an additional floor for architectural merit and context for a mixed-use development originally granted on December 11th, 2019. This one sits in Anson Borough. The Heights District is 3.5 and 4, and in the Old and Historic District. And this one, the applicant is Mr. Capers Bar. But here again, we've got some just a few images from the original approval for you. Staff comment is this is a vested first-year approval extension requiring automatic board approval if submitted in a timely manner, which is good for 1 year and may be renewed 4 more times in 1-year increments per ordinance section 54962. This extension is to expire on December 11th, 2022. We're recommending approval of a first 1-year extension of final approval to expire on December 11th, 2022.
Okay. Do I hear a motion from the board?
I'd move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Just in time, Mr. Bello. All right. Calling the roll. Ms. Subject, how do you vote?
Yay, in favor?
Mr. Bello?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yay in favor.
And I vote yay in favor. The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, this one, agenda item number 3 is the adoption of the solar panel policy statement. You should have received a draft of it last night. It has been before you and it has also been back and forth at the BARS for a few months now. And we have Frankie Pinto on the call too. If you have any questions about what it's been doing at BARS, we'll try to answer them.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Sure.
The third paragraph down, solar collectors proposed to be installed on properties rated category 1 or 2 on the architectural inventory shall not be visible from the public right of way. And I looked at the projects that where our work is working on that are categories 1 and 2, and there are no sections of the roofs that are not visible, which would effectively mean that you're not going to put solar collectors on a category 1 or 2 building. So I just wanted to, there's some situations where they're minimally visible, but they're still visible. And just wanted to bring that up as a topic, and that is my only comment.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Well, hearing none, does any board member wish to make a motion?
We actually have a public speaker for this one.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay. Sorry, I missed that part.
All right, we have Ms. Erin Madigan.
Thank you. Erin Madigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to commend staff for undertaking the work to develop this policy statement and appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback and collaborate on the specific guidelines. In recent years, there has been a notable increase in applications for solar panel installations, and reviewing their appropriateness within the historic district context is often challenging. We feel this policy will help provide critical clarification on how most sensitively to approach solar panel projects for historic properties, which will better support applicants, board, and staff in the design review process. We are pleased to lend our support for the solar panel policy statement and hope you move forward with its adoption tonight. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to bring this up one more time because each of us on this board could potentially be affected by that third paragraph. So I just want to see if anybody's got any other thoughts about it.
Well, I'll weigh in, James. I think, you know, just like all the other board policy statements we have, these are a very strong recommendation and guideline for us to follow in decisions in the future. But it doesn't mean that on a category 1 building, a solar panel could not be approved. You could take it to the board and still, you know, there could be some, you know, technically it's seen from the south side, but you've got to look through 3 buildings to see it. So the board could feel like it warrants approval. So I think it's good to have a guide. To me, it's just like a piazza enclosure. It's important, you know, to set up the standard, but occasionally, you know, things are allowed. So I get where you're coming from, but it doesn't leave us without any wiggle room if needed. So I'm okay with it being, but it does provide clear direction, you know, so which is what the public needs. So I'm okay with it as it's written.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in my experience, policy statements are most useful to the potential applicant. And they don't really, you know, fully constrain or define what the board does, unless the board wants to erode its credibility by ignoring its own policy statements. But I think this would give us the latitude to deal with unique conditions, but also putting owners of category 1 and 2 buildings on notice that they are under heightened levels of scrutiny. Any further board discussion?
I'll move for approval. Oh, sorry, Luda.
No, I just wanted to support both of you with your statements. We're still looking at each project as each project, so we'll see. But this policy is, like you said, it is solid and strong. So I'm going to support it.
Okay. Any other comments or a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Motion for approval of the policy statement made and seconded. I'll call the roll. Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Okay. Ms. Subject.
Yay in favor.
Mr. Bello.
Yay in favor.
And I vote yay as well. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 4 is 1 Berry Street. Request is final approval of mock-up panels for construction of a condominium project. This one is in Charleston Village and in the Old and Historic District. Got a little context here for you. This is the aerial, the Jasper to the right, to the east. This is, you're probably familiar, this was looking east with the mock-up kind of is in the foreground there now. And the Jasper sits in the background. Looking west. Okay, with this one, we've got Mr. Rob Rubik, Mr. Ivan Castanon, I was going to say that right, Patrick Kuzak, and Mr. Ivan K. And I've promoted all of them. They should be on. Thanks.
Hi, this is Rob Rubik. We're just looking for approval of the mock-up panels for the Charles Townhome project.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Any questions from the board? All right, well, we'll move on. Any public comment on this application?
No, sir.
Any staff comment or recommendation?
Yes. Okay. Number 1, the shutters are placed off the limestone jamb rather than tightly against it as drawn. The installation is also atypical in that the mounting hardware is not on the inside of the jamb. As installed, the shutters are sized correctly to properly cover the opening and are indeed operable. Because these are used in a limited manner, applicants shall work with staff to continue studying other attachment methods and locations. Alternately, if no good solution is found, the shutters, which occur only in 8 places on the project, might be abandoned. Number 2, joints in the stone should be minimized with grout or sealant to match the limestone color and be flush with limestone surfaces. 3, applicants who work with staff on finalizing sealant, grout, and vent cover colors. 4, typical corner limestone at the outside corner is flush with brick. This would be more successful if pulled out to the face of the stone fascia below the coping above. Applicant has confirmed that this will be pulled out to create an offset of 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch to keep the materials out of plane. The inside of the perimeter beam at the entry porch needs to be narrowed so that the inside width above the column has the same relationship with the outside face of column. This beam needs to read as a deeper structural member to be successful. Applicant has confirmed the edge of the beam at the entry porch interior will be pulled back to match the relationship with the column on the outside and that the ceiling will be raised. 6, the flashing below the stone coping needs to be minimized and held tightly against the wall below. 7, the raw cut end of the aluminum member at the exterior window jamb needs to be sealed. Applicant is confirming if this piece needs to exist here. Exposed fasteners need to be minimized here also. And 8, the ironwork at the top of the entry porch would benefit from a tightening of pickets to be more visually appropriate. We're recommending final approval of mock-up with board and staff comments incorporated. Staff to work with applicant on various items noted.
Okay. There's an opportunity here for an applicant response if needed.
I don't think any response is needed. I discussed this with Lawrence Courtney earlier today.
Okay, great. All right, board discussion and a vote.
Mr. Chair, I'll go first.
Yeah.
The stainless steel fasteners that are used on the rails could be coated with some type of black, but I applaud the use of the stainless steel in those fasteners. That aluminum edge is raw and should be coated in some form. Some of the returns in the limestone weren't continuous or complete, but we discussed that on site yesterday and they will be. And I, again, wanted to say, I thought the mock-up yesterday, I thought it looked better than most than we see. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any further board comments?
This is Luda. I agree that this mock-up panel is one of the better ones we have seen recently, and maybe because it's a design, classical design, but I agree with all the comments by staff and added comments from James. We discussed that yesterday, and there are some searches by builder and architect to do some of the details. So we're looking forward to the resolution of those. And I will be supporting the approval. Final approval.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Sure.
Final approval of mock-up with board and staff comments incorporated.
Okay, so we have a motion for final approval of the mock-up with board and staff comments incorporated. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, made and seconded. I'll call the roll. Mr. Bello, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Subchuck, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
And I vote yay in favor. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 5 is 164 Rutledge Avenue. This is a request for final approval for replacement windows. Radcliffe Borough neighborhood and historic district. We have an aerial here showing you where this location is. This is on the Ashley Hall campus. These images are taken from Rutledge Avenue. The building that's, it's a little hard to see because this front portion that abuts Rutledge Avenue is not part of the project, but it's the building that it's part of the whole complex there, but it's right where the hand is there behind the tree. And so the north and south elevations are exposed. This is looking north on Rutledge. I'm looking south. And with this one, missing the speaker. I don't have anyone registered to speak on this one. Let me find the applicant's name here, sorry.
Sorry, it should be Ben Bucket Green.
All right, let's find him here. Sorry about that. Gotcha. Okay, he's coming.
I always thought it would be fun to just pull someone randomly out of the audience and ask them to present it. Yeah,
Do that.
It's like a fate worse than death for 90% of the population.
Okay, all right. Buckley Green, it's all yours.
Very good. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much. Courtney and I met about this on downtown. So the building that we're talking about is the shaded area. This is Jenkins Building. These are double hung sashes that are probably around 1994 and earlier. So these are, some of these windows have Southern Lumber specifications attached to them. So what we're looking to do is replace those windows with a Marvin impact rated or a simulated divided light window. This was a specification that I pulled up in talking with Courtney about something that might be appropriate to that building, considering its post renovation state as being attached to the broadly renovated media center that happened in pre-2008. So we're looking to upgrade the existing windows, which are failing at a rapid rate. And what we'd like to do is take off, rather than having to maintain these windows in place with the storm shutters, is to actually upgrade them to an impact rated window. And considering their low visibility to Rutledge, what we're not trying to do is do the street front area. These are really just the two elevations that face interior to campus, and give us a little more longevity out of these.
Okay. Any board questions?
I have two. Do we have any, I looked through the application and the photos were pretty limited. I think we had maybe 2 pictures of a window. Do we have any more photos? And and maybe I just didn't see them. I mean, we have older drawings, but that's not that helpful. The other thing, I'd like some close-ups, I guess, is my question. The other question I had is, do we have an age for this building?
1965 was the earliest set of on-site prints that I could find for this building. I do have in the packet, the application showed an interior elevation, an interior view of this window from about 5 feet away. It showed it as a double hung. I'm also here right on campus. I'd be happy to carry you over and take a look at one of them.
Well, it's just helpful when reviewing an application to have sufficient information. I mean, we don't have many pictures of the windows, so it's,
there's the top sash of there's the bottom view of a sash of what I understood to be a Southern Lumber window that was done in a replacement sash that was done in 1994 from a set of renovation plans of this building. There's another image that went in that showed that view of that sash from standing directly in front of it from the inside, that showed it as a putty glazed window, not an antique heart pine window. It's a pine window with aluminum stop. And as you can see, the aluminum sash tracks.
but this one doesn't have, does this have an aluminum sash track?
That's what you're looking at. That's an aluminum sash track to
That
that
is right
level.
there in front?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not talking about what I would consider to be widely historic windows. What we're talking about is post 1950. This is 1964 was when these windows were installed as it was identified as a dormitory. Apparently, it's never really been used as a dormitory, but that's what the plan showed. And that hand-drawn set is the set that was issued from the architect for plans, I think, of when that building was built, from what I could find in the archives on campus.
All right, any other questions for staff or for the applicant?
Just Tori Parrish, I would like to confirm that I heard a couple of dates. Did you say the windows are from 1994 or 1964?
Mr. Buckley Green, I think that would be your question to field.
I'm sorry, I didn't unmute. So I think these windows date back to 94 as having been installed at that date. Maybe 1960. I would be hard pressed to say that window goes all the way back to 1965 from my experience.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Well, hearing none, we'll move on to public comment.
Thank you. We don't have any public comments.
Okay, staff comments and recommendation.
All right, we have one staff comment.
Mhm.
While staff is not adamantly opposed to the replacement of windows on newer buildings on a case-by-case basis, which have higher performance with minimal visual difference, per section 54.236 of the ordinance, the BAR is guided by the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. These guidelines encourage retaining and repairing windows, which are important in defining the overall historic character of a building. Therefore, our recommendation is denial with the repair of windows as possible, in-kind replacement as required, and interior storm sashes if needed.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a few minutes for an applicant response if desired.
Yeah, so I would say that we're not, can I carry you out to take a look at this building in context and say that as of the time at which that building was renovated and became the Math and Science Center, that, it's one complete building now. This is no longer a historic building as it attaches to this. Jenkins as a building, once the Math and Science Center was attached to it, I would say as a fully LEED certified building, we've moved past this as being a historic portion of that structure.
Okay. Any other clarification?
The other component to that would be that one of the components that I put into the application and in conversation with Lawrence about this was our current life safety plan, as approved through the renovation of that building, combined these buildings as one component. Our HVAC systems are tied to it. Our life safety system is tied to it. Our fire plan unifies this building as one component. And even if you looked at it from the general standpoint of, what happens when you renovate a building past its 50% rule, I said, I would say we're well past that being a historic portion of campus. And we'd ask that we allow ourselves to be able to, put windows in this building that make sense. The building is a thoroughly modern. It's the first LEED certified building in Charleston. It's got the entire building has a gray water system that was approved through the city. We're not talking about a historic building in Charleston anymore.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move to board discussion at this point. Eddie, I think you're muted.
Well,
Your
I was
mouth
just
is
trying
working.
not to be the first to talk. All right, well, I've got a few thoughts on this. One, I consider this building historic, and I if the interior's changed a lot and you've connected it to a historic, non-historic building, I applaud you for that and for the LEED certification. That's great. From this board's point of view, which is the public right-of-way, that's a historic building. And this board has been very consistent over the years about not replacing character-defining features with inappropriate components. And I would consider, and Marvin makes a great window, but I know even from Rutledge, I would be able to stand there and tell the difference between a Marvin window that's brand new and a more historically accurate built wood, true divided single pane window. So I just, as a matter of consistency, this board just typically never approves that. It's a tenet of what historic preservation is. It's very difficult for me to support, and not picking on the applicant, but I mean, I got like one picture, so I don't really have any. It's not my job to go walk through the building with you. It's not that hard to take a few more photos, but I don't have a convincing argument for me to support going against what the board typically approves. And so it's pretty much what staff said. So I can't support this.
Yeah, I think,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I could say exactly what Eddie did, or just say I agree with what he said. So that's what I'm going to do.
I think just for the applicant's understanding, you can already tell that the board is very apprehensive about that, but that's because the board has to be very careful and conscientious when we're talking about swapping out, architectural features like windows. And now we might be dealing with windows that are not historic, and the board has reviewed situations like that in the past where there's documentation that these windows are obviously not from the original construction, or they're not old enough to be considered historic. Sometimes they're even worse than the building, the windows are replaced. But we really need to see documentation of that. We need to see a lot of photos of the existing conditions. We need some documentation to know that all the windows are from the same era or not. And then we need to see elevations drawn with the proposed new windows in place to judge how the replacement of the windows might change the appearance of the building. Because even though this building's been heavily modified, it still has historic bones. And that's true of most historic buildings in Charleston. They've all been heavily modified, but yet they're still considered historic. This application is really just not complete. It may be completely fine to replace these windows, but we really need to know a lot more about the condition and character of the windows that you're proposing to replace, and the character and appearance of the windows you're proposing to put in. Other than that, I agree with staff's comments. Any other board comments or a motion?
I just agree with everything what has been said so far, so including the recommendations from staff.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and make a motion for denial.
for?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion for denial. Is that based off of anything in particular? I, prefer that motions for denial have.
Based on, how about based on city staff comments?
Based on staff comments. So I'll take that as an amendment for a motion for denial based on staff comments. Mr. Metters, do you agree with that amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Eddie if he'd be okay with board and staff comments.
Yes, sorry. Board and staff comments.
Okay, amendment of the amendment is to include staff comments, and it sounds like both of y'all are in concurrence on that. So we have a motion for denial based on board and staff comments made and seconded. I'll call the roll. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Robinson, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Okay. Mr. Bello
Yay in favor.
and Mr. Metters?
Yay in favor.
And I vote likewise. The motion carries unanimously. All right, I guess at this point we can turn over the role of chair to our rightful office holder.
Staff comments.
Mr. Pro Tem, thank you very much. Thank you for
Like
being
staff-
willing to pass the shoe. I wasn't 15 minutes late. I was 25 minutes late. I was doing my best, Jay. I was doing my best.
I understand. No problem at all.
Thank you so much. So-
Courtney said he was supporting it.
And did he just deny it?
Yeah, Lawrence Courtney said staff.
Mr. Buckley Green, oh, now he's on mute. Okay, good. Let's see. Ms. Parrish, my agenda item number 6 has been removed for consideration this evening, correct?
Correct.
And so we now have before us agenda item number 7, 89 through 95 Cannon Street. Walk us through that.
All right, this one is 89 to 95 Cannon Street. The request is conceptual approval for a new mixed-use building and 4 row homes. It's within the Cannonboro Elliott Borough neighborhood, Height District 2.5 and 3, and in the Old City District. We've got some context images for you. The first one is an aerial. Cannon Street is, and it was right there, kind of traversing the whole image from left to right. And then this is looking south into the project. You'll remember that the building behind the wall, we voted to demolish that about a month and a half ago. This is looking west on Cannon Street. And then looking east with the project on your right behind the wall or at the wall. All right, this one's got Mr. Steve Ramos and he's ready to go.
Mr. Ramos, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I'm really excited to be presenting this project tonight. It's definitely become a real passion project because I live in this neighborhood. This is the Cannonboro Elliott Borough neighborhood. And if I don't do a good job, I might be asked to leave. And that's problematic because we really enjoy living there. And I've been walking by this site for a long time and always thought that it was a really great opportunity. Not often do you find a site of this size that has the opportunity for new construction on one of our major streets. So I always thought there was an opportunity to do a great building here, not just an infill project, but a really great corner building and a proud corner building. And so what I'm presenting tonight is a commercial building at the corner of Cannon Street and Carrera Court, as well as 4 row homes that are down Carrera Court, which is a very narrow alley. Next slide. Next. I think everyone's pretty familiar with the site. Next. This is just a collection of photos of buildings on Cannon Street. Some are very near to the site, some are just a few blocks away. I see a lot of fantastic architecture in the neighborhood and on Cannon Street. Cannon is, I believe, the widest street in the neighborhood. And there is a collection of really fantastic architecture. There is still some buildings that need some TLC, as well as some new structures that have really added to the neighborhood. So again, I feel really privileged to be able to work in this street. Next. These are some images that show Carrera Court. Whenever I give a tour of folks to Charleston, I spend a lot of time showing them the alleys of Charleston because I think they are some of our greatest urban environments we have in the city. And I think that Carrera Court could be that. The fact that it's narrow actually doesn't bother me because some of our best alleys are narrow. But unfortunately, the site wall on our property is what is really hindering it from being good. So we really feel like this project can contribute to make another great Charleston alley. Next. This is the survey. Just one thing I'll point out is that our project will be accessed from both Carrera Court to the north. Well, actually, it's actually to the east, but it's to the page north on this drawing. But we also have access via the large parking lot, which is 200 Rutledge. So when you zoom out, you'll see there's a parking lot and some blue dashed lines that represent an access easement. Next slide. This is just a glimpse of some of the scenery in the Cannonboro-Elliottboro neighborhood. I really enjoy living there because it really is a mixed-use urban community. There are businesses integrated almost on every corner. There's no shortage of places where you can grab a beer or a latte, and we have some fantastic restaurants as well. Next slide. I also think we have some fantastic corner buildings in the neighborhood. Because we had a corner site, I spent a lot of time looking at the corner architecture, and there's a lot of variety. Most of them, of course, address the corner by chamfering the corner and putting an entrance right on that corner. And that was something that we felt like was appropriate for this site. Next slide. So for the commercial building specifically, these are three precedents that I have spent a lot of time looking at. The building up top, that's 53 Bogard. Consequently, it's about a stone throw away from my home, but that's a beautiful Italianate building. I consider it a grand building, and it's dropped right into the center of the neighborhood. And I think that's fantastic. And that's an idea that we'd like to do on this property. The image in the bottom left, I think that's 191 King Street. To me, that's the perfect facade in Charleston. It's just simple and repetitive. It has fantastic proportions. And the materials and the detailing, specifically at the ground floor, are what really elevate it. And I've always wanted to do a facade that was that simple but beautiful. And then last but not least, the building that is Stella's Restaurant at the corner of Warren and St. Philip is another great corner building. It's in a neighborhood, but I really showed it here for the material palette, which is stucco on masonry, which is something I would like to do for these buildings. And of course, it too has fantastic details. Next. I mentioned that this project has row homes on it along Carrera Court. I've also been obsessing about row homes during this process. And although I never thought of Charleston as a row home town, we actually have a lot of fantastic examples, some of which you see here. Of course, the Bull Street row homes are somewhat iconic and grand. But all of these row homes, they really show the beauty of repetition. And by adding details like Juliet balconies and detailing at cornices and entrances, they can really become fantastic urban buildings. Next. If you could go one slide up. You skipped a few. Keep going, the other. One more. There you go. Thank you. So I like to show a little bit of process. This is not the scheme we are proposing. This was an original scheme that was all row homes. It had 3 row homes on Cannon Street and 4 row homes along Carrera Court. And you can see I really took a lot of inspiration from those images that I just showed you of great row homes in Charleston. We liked the scheme, but we felt like having mixed use was something that would be of the greatest benefit to the neighborhood. So next slide. This is a concept sketch, which is essentially what I'm presenting tonight, which is a 3-story mixed-use building on Cannon Street. Bringing the building to the street was just an obvious solution. That building on Cannon Street will have a beautiful storefront at the ground floor that will be completely commercial. We're hoping to get both restaurant and retail at the ground floor. And then there will be apartment units on levels 2 and 3. You can see that simple architecture reflected in that sketch, but also having really great, beautiful details. The row homes will still occur along Carrera Court. There will be 4 identical row homes along Carrera Court that are 2.5 stories. These buildings are all traditionally detailed. The row homes along Carrera Court, I jogged them just a tad just to give some relief to the facade because it would be an otherwise long facade. But they are symmetrical and identical. And I think will be a really great addition to Carrera Court.
Mr. Ramos, I'm going to say your initial 10 minutes has expired, but the chair, as you know, is always inclined to give additional time. Would you like an extension?
Yes, sir. And I will expedite the process.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you. Next slide. This is just a sketch of what that ground floor looks like at the commercial building with the commercial entrance. Next slide. The overall site plan, essentially a computer drawing of the hand sketch that I showed you previously. Next. The overall ground floor plan. I just wanted to point out that this site is in a floodplain. The floodplain is about 2 feet above grade. So the row homes are elevated with little stoops on Carrera Court. The commercial building is in the floodplain. We will be flood-proofing that ground floor. Next slide. Level 2, you can see the apartments are accessed via an elevator and staircase on the rear. They also have big grand piazzas that face south. And then you can see the 4 row homes to the south. Next slide. This is level 3. The commercial building, level 2 and 3 are identical. Level 3 in the row homes is a half story. You have gabled roofs, and they also have little roof decks that are carved out on the western side. Next slide. And here is a roof plan. Next. And here you can see the 2D elevation on Cannon Street. I think I've talked enough about this facade, but you can see how that lays out. Next slide. This is the elevation along Carrera Court. You can see the commercial building on the right side. So the storefront wraps the corner. And then you can see the row homes, which are effectively mirrors of each other. They have stoops. They also have little Juliet balconies that extend out over the stoops. Next slide. This is the western facade. You can see the little vignette 3D in the bottom right-hand corner of this sheet. So keep in mind that there is still a wall on the neighboring property. Unfortunately, maybe one day that will be a development as well, but you will see the western facade of the commercial building, and you can see the row homes back in the background. Next slide. This is the back facade of the commercial building with the double piazzas there is a few parking spaces underneath the piazzas. Next. This is the very back facade, the southern facade of the row homes. These are also stucco on block. Next slide. This is the north facade of the row homes, which will be partially visible from Cannon Street. Next slide. The streetscape elevations. Next. This is the streetscape along Carrera Court, which is going to be a huge improvement to what's there today. Next. Building sections. Next. And 3D images. This is, again, a computerized sketch or a computerized version of the original sketch. Very simple facade. I would like to have folding operable windows at the ground floor so that the restaurant can be opened up. Next slide. Same facade, just from a different angle. Next slide. This is a view down Carrera Court. We are widening Carrera Court. Depending on where you measure, we're widening anywhere between 18 inches to 4 feet. Next slide. Here's a view from within Carrera Court. Next. Another shot in Carrera Court looking north. You can see those stoops. You can see the Juliet balconies. The one area where I was going to integrate some brick is at those stoops that you can see here. Next. Again, just showing you some process. I like to look at muntin patterns in windows to see how they affect the overall design and scale. So for the mixed use building, we're doing 2/2 buildings, 2/2 windows. Whereas with the row homes, I thought some more muntins would help. So we're doing 4/4 for the row home buildings. Next slide. This is the last one. Again, we are asking for conceptual approval tonight of both the commercial building and the row homes. I appreciate you giving me the extra time tonight. I would love to get approval, and I would welcome critique and would love for advice on how to make this better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rollis, for that excellent presentation. Any public comment on this agenda item? Tori.
Yes, sir. I have 3 people registered. I've only found 2, but we have Ms. Erin Milligan, Mr. Justin Strobler, and Mr. Andrew Gold. Andrew is the only one I can't find, but if Erin would like to begin.
Great. Ms. Milligan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Erin Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant for meeting with us and being so receptive to our feedback. This is a critical location at the heart of the Cannon Borough, LA Borough neighborhood, and we feel the proposal presents an appropriately scaled, compatible infill project that will contribute to the character of the context. It's refreshing to see a well-executed traditional design that draws on local vernacular examples and includes substantial high-quality details. We feel the construction and materials will help the building read of their time, but would encourage continued study of creating more uniqueness and distinction of elements such as the storefront, window hoods, and cornice line on the commercial building to allow for a more contemporary expression. So with that, we are supportive of aspects of height, scale, mass, and architectural direction of this project and strongly urge the board to move for conceptual approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milligan. Mr. Schwebler.
This is Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation. Again, we'd like to thank the applicants for meeting with us several times over the past few months as this project developed. We believe this is an appropriately scaled development for this portion of Cannon Street. The mixed-use nature of the project and the sympathetic architectural styles will also benefit the neighborhood and help to enhance Carrera Court greatly. We recommend conceptual approval at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwebler. Any luck with Mr. Gold, Ms. Parrish?
Can't find him. He doesn't seem to be on the call. And then you will remember that you received 1 public letter, and this was for this project from Mr. Mary Hawkins.
Okay. and that his letter is incorporated into the record for our purposes. And pursuant to our new guidelines and rules. City staff comments and recommendations.
Okay. Number one, the north elevation of the row homes indicates a vertical massing break to allow the gable to conclude and to be fully articulated. Revised to make the plane change a minimum of 8 inches to be clearly perceived. And number two, regarding the window mutton pattern studies, staff takes no issue with the preferred direction for each building. Our recommendation is conceptual approval with board and staff comment.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. Mr. Ramos, you technically have the ability to have a rebuttal of clarification period. Anything further you want to get on the record?
Well, I'm thankful for everyone's kind words and support. The neighborhood specifically has been really supportive of the project, and in many ways kind of gave me the courage to do a project like this. I think Ms. Minigan's comments regarding using the details of the building to convey contemporary design is an excellent one. And one of the things we're planning to do is use a CNC router for a lot of the details, such as the paneling below the windows, window headers, as well as the brackets at the top of the building, to do things that are a little unique and clearly of today. And so with that, again, I just thank everybody for their support.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I will then move to the comments of my fellow board members. What do my board members have to say about agenda item number 7?
Well, I'll start.
All right, Mr. Bello.
And I know where Steve lives. He's about 2 blocks from my office. So I know the site really well. And I really appreciate the great effort to really study and do a Charleston building. So I think overall the building is very successful, and it's always good to see so much thought put into and care put into a design. So I'll go ahead and say I'm in support of conceptual approval. Of course, I do have a couple of minor comments. One involves the row houses, and this is just a suggestion, but the shifting, to make it, not such a long facade, seems kind of arbitrary. And I'm wondering if there's a way, if you want to break out the facade, I don't know that it's that important because that's not what a row house does. But if you feel the need, maybe it's a little more intentional. I don't know what that means, but maybe it does something with the stoops and that's how it's broken up. I don't know. It just seems like you just said, let's move this one piece, and I don't know if you have to do that or not. So that's a minor comment just in my mind to consider. The second thing is on the Cannon Street facade. I think the proportions are great. I do think it just seems to me that and Tori, can you show just one view of the Cannon Street facade? And I would just ask the architect to study. Actually, can you go to one that just shows the whole thing instead of all the pieces? Sorry, thank you. One more. Yeah, right there, the first floor to me, and part of it's the shadows that you have turned on, it seems a little low. And I don't know if you just need to bring the window heads up and make that cornice line at the sort of first level a little narrower, or if the whole thing needs to go up. You could disagree, but I just think that'd be worth looking at. So those are 2 minor comments. Then I have one sort of major comment question. I think this is a fairly large building for this neighborhood. And I think that's okay, because there are larger buildings like this. It's probably one of the larger buildings, definitely on Canon, and one of the larger buildings in all of this neighborhood. I think though, when you look at all of the precedents that you showed in this neighborhood, almost all of them are lap siding. And not saying stucco is inappropriate. If you just think, and if the board disagrees with me, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But to me, the stucco, it seems a little foreign in this application in this neighborhood, Cannonboro, Elliottboro. And I think it will make the building feel larger. And so again, I'll just open it up to the the rest of the board, but to me, it seems a little contrary to the context to have a large stucco building. And again, I appreciate it's all on masonry, so it's going to be done the right way. But to me, all of the buildings, almost all of them, except for a couple of churches around here and you know, an occasional smaller stucco building, almost everything up here is lap siding. And I think stucco will make it feel a little large on the street to me. So I would just throw that out and just see what the board says. And if the applicant, I'm fine with, there's a response to that. But that's my one comment. I think the stucco should be restudied to be siding. Then I'll be
Thank you,
quiet.
Mr. Bella. Other board comments?
I agree with Eddie's assessment of the project generally. The only thing I might take issue with is the material choice. Actually building this thing with a stucco facade might be the one thing you need to do to differentiate it from the historic architectural blocks around it. But it's a very successful project architecturally because it's programmatically restrained. You could have pushed to put a whole lot more square footage on this property, and I really appreciate that you and your team resisted that urge. You'll get more per square foot that way anyway. That's all I'll say. I support the project.
Thank you, Mr. White. Further board comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
concerning the lap siding versus the stucco, I think what's most appealing to me is the stucco is going to be on block. I think if the stucco weren't going to be on block, I would move towards the siding. But the fact that they're going to build it with an application on top of masonry, it means that this building's going to be here a long time. And I have great appreciation for that. I like the project. Steve, I think you did a good job. Tori, if you could go to sheet A902. So if you look over the wall, is there something that could fill that one blank section underneath those two windows? You know, when you look, it looks like there's just those windows wrap around from the north side to the west side on the top two floors, and then that cornice wraps around, and then there's a blank area right there. Now, Steve, if that's all that I got to say, that's pretty good. I really like your project.
Further board comments? Thank you, Mr. Mentor.
Yes, so there's a lot Steve, we were at the site for demolition, and you were talking about traditional design for this building, and I was thinking that you probably will be kind of mimicking the single house, single Charleston and all that, but you came up with a really nice scheme. So, and it's urban. I think it could help to start to develop the Canon Street. This property is like next door to the kind of wall in the same direction. So that's why I'm looking at this this particular perspective and wall hitting corner of your building. And I wonder if you can negotiate maybe with your neighbors and open up that wall. It doesn't have to be, maybe there's the iron grate and things like that. So you have you don't have this encroachment of this wall on your building already. Another thing is, I think I am in agreement with Eddie about getting out the storefront a little bit more, get a little bit more vertical proportions. But I think the stucco is appropriate here, particularly there's on the corner of Rutledge and Canon, there's a historic building and it's stucco. It's two-story, but still, so it's kind of continuity of that scheme. And I think if for the long facade as it is, if it will be siding, it actually will bring the horizontality of this building even more, and I think it will look actually more massive in my mind than Stockholm. So there's kind of in support of one member and that's basically my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sovcik. Mr. Ramos, I'm going to be straightforward but legalistic. This is a height scale and mass study. In my time on the board, this is the easiest height scale and mass study that I have had to vote in favor of, which I will in a minute. I think it pushes the upper limits of that for this particular streetscape. But for those who are listening from the public or other applicants trying to figure out what this board is looking for, this is one of the most sympathetic approaches to a building that is not, in fact, infill in the neighborhood, is a nice corner and therefore has a nice marquee facade. It's sympathetic to the neighborhood. It doesn't blow out the scale of everything else around it. And it's a very nice, thoughtful, sympathetic treatment. The only thing I would say is I know you have the ability to fairly quickly do a rendering that shows this building with siding on it. Might be worth doing just as a study. Don't think it costs you anything. I think you've heard as much pro and con on either stucco or lap siding on the building to give you an idea that taking a look at a study might be worthwhile. But otherwise, I think it's a great project, and it's nice to have something that comes up for conceptual approval that is so easy to look at in terms of its contextualization in the neighborhood and say that this fits. So thanks, and it will certainly have my approval. Other board comments?
Well, I'll introduce a motion if
Okay.
everybody's ready. I'll move for I'll move for conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Mr. White, I hear your motion as a motion for conceptual approval incorporating board and staff comments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bello. I have a motion and a second, therefore I'll proceed to call the roll. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote on this agenda item?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Metters,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Bello,
Yay in favor.
Mr. White,
Yay in favor.
and myself, yay in favor, unanimously passes. Conceptual approval with board and staff comments incorporated. Thank you, Mr. Ramos.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I may go ahead and sign off here. The next
Sure.
application is sizable, and we only have about 20 minutes before I'm supposed to depart anyway. So thank you all, and y'all have a good evening.
Thank you for serving as our temporary chair. I really do appreciate
No
it.
problem.
All right, Ms. Parrish, agenda item number 8.
All right, agenda item number 8 is 0F or 678 King Street and 666 King Street. This is the request for conceptual approval for construction of a 55-unit affordable housing project. It's in the West Side neighborhood, Height District 5, and within the Historic Corridor District. We've got an aerial here for you with Interstate 26 kind of hugging this property. And that is H and F streets to the north and King Street a block over. This one is the terminus of F Street, looking into the project, and this is looking north on F Street. And this one is from King Street looking back into the project. This will be one of the main entry driveway into the project. All right, with this one, we have Ms. Robinson Vila and Miss Caitlin Scoville.
Okay, who would like to speak first for the applicant?
Good evening. My name is Robinson Villa. I am the development director for NAT. We are an affordable housing developer based out of Greenville. My address is 329 Megan's Bay Lane in Charleston. I'm the project manager for this project, so I just kind of wanted to speak quickly about kind of what we're proposing in terms of affordability. It's kind of a broad term, but what this project is something you may be familiar with, a low-income housing tax credit project administered through SC State Housing. So it's a 55-unit project consisting of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. It will be income and rent restricted to people earning 30 and 80% of area median income. And it's a city-owned property that we're developing on via a ground lease. And that's really kind of the background. I just wanted to share just kind of briefly what we're talking about here when we're talking about affordable housing. And I'll toss it over to McMillan, Pass, Smith, who will pick up the rest of the presentation.
Okay.
Ms. Scoville?
Any luck?
She is on the call.
I think Brian is Brian Fessler is on the call. I think he's the one who's going to be.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. This is Caitlin Scova with Millen Pass and Smith. I'm getting to Brian right now. We had computer technical difficulties.
We have Mr. Brian Fessler too.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for the delay. This is Brian Fessler speaking for McMillan, Paston Smith on behalf of the Lowline Affordable Housing Project, 55 unit project. We are thankful for this opportunity to be in front of you for conceptual approval of height, scale, and mass. Next slide, please. The project is located behind the Housing Authority's buildings on King Street in a currently wooded lot. And the image below kind of shows you the height, scale, and massing in relationship to the neighborhood, which is primarily 1- and 2-story houses. The Housing Authority's project, which are 2 stories, and the overpass and some of the larger buildings on either side of that. Next, please. The site plan, the project scope incorporates four properties: the site of the development, 2 lots for the Housing Authority's projects, and the DOT property underneath the overpass. So there are, in addition to the building, there are a series of site improvements to provide access to the lot. Next, please. And some additional views of the massing in relation to the context of the neighborhood. Next, please. The project has a King Street address, but it has no frontage on King Street. So that's why some of these drawings, you'll see a 0 F Street address. The TRC recently confirmed that they originally had some hesitation of giving a King Street address, but they're moving forward with that from this point forward. So the only frontage of the building, the project scope, is underneath the DOT property of the overpass. So we have some improvements there, but the building is obviously taller than the 2 stories that are on King Street. So you will see that from certain angles. Next, please. Here's a few more views of the context of the Housing Authority's projects. The billboard is unfortunately part of the scope of the project that has to stay. So you'll see how our project addresses that as we move forward. Next, please. You can see the project scope dashed in the currently wooded lot. There are a few green trees that have been approved to be removed. And you can kind of see the scope of the existing conditions. You also see F and H Street, which currently dead end into the property and the Housing Authority's property. One important item to note here is the connection from King Street to the property is not a DOT street and is not a City of Charleston street. It is property of the Charleston Housing Authority. Our direction when we were awarded this project was to connect the streets to these properties. There are some ongoing discussions on whether that's appropriate or not, and the neighborhood has some opinions on that, and the Housing Authority also has some opinions. So the proposal you'll see tonight is from the direction of the city, which is to connect those. How that is ultimately developed might be one of 3 ways. Either it'll remain closed off, it'll be open for vehicle, pedestrian traffic, or it will be open and have a series of removable bollards so bicycles and pedestrians can come through and vehicles cannot. But the proposal you'll see today will have full connectivity. Next, please. This is the site plan with the building on it. You can kind of get a scale of the footprint of the building and the height as well. Parking will be self-contained within the overall project, with about a third of the parking going to the housing authority, with the green spaces located as close to the housing authority as possible. The blue spaces represent ones that are dedicated to the new project, and the pinkish orange colored spaces are those dedicated to the public as an amenity and gateway to the low-lying park system, which you see kind of in the upper right-hand corner. And this project will have some direct connectivity to the low-lying park system in a couple different ways. One, through the parking lot area. It'll have connections for the residents as well from the courtyard side, and then the road that's on the housing authority's property will also have a connection through to the park system as well. Next, please. Floor plan wise, the first floor plan has on that connection to the low-lying park system. We've tried to actively engage that with offices, fitness rooms, community spaces, things that have a little bit of a street life to them, but are self-contained within the functions of this building. The rest of the floor plan is dedicated to a mix of studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. All the units have on the first floor have a porch that is attempting to connect to the neighborhoods. And there's also a larger kind of communal porch off of the communal living space as well. Next, please. The upper floors are similar in nature, but they are a 100% mix of studio, 1 and 2 and 3 bedroom units. And floors 2, 3, and 4 are identical. And then the portion over the amenity bar on the 4th floor turns into a roofscape. Next, please. That's the 4th floor. And then above that, the 5th floor, that bar is taller than the other massing in an attempt to lower our massing towards the houses on F and H Street. Next, please. We attempt to locate all of the mechanical units as centrally as possible and screen them from view. Next, please. Here are some drawings to show the project in context with the overpass, with the neighboring buildings, the King Street elevation. Material wise, the building is a mix of bricks and fiber cement siding. Next, please. You can see those a little bit closer in this one. So it's brick, fiber cement siding, aluminum windows, 2 types of railing systems, one a little more horizontal and one a little more vertical in nature. Next, please. This is an elevation looking north. Next, please. We've tried to develop the massing in a series of planes so that there is depth and movement in the facades, and it's broken down into massing that we think is more appropriate for the neighborhood. At the top of the building, we've varied the heights of those planes in an effort to keep some visual interest there, but consciously without putting a cap on this building. On the lower level, we've been attempted to engage the community, the park system as best we can with either the active spaces in the as part of the community spaces of the building, or through having porches that step down into the community as well. Charleston has a good tradition of that, and it's something that we don't see as often in multifamily housing. So making an effort to engage the street level, give that option, as opposed to funneling everyone through a central lobby, is I think something that's real positive for this neighborhood and this site in particular with its access to the low line system. Next, please.
Mr. Fessler, you've run through your initial 10 minutes. Would you like a 5-minute extension?
I would gratefully appreciate another
Sure.
5 minutes. Thank you. Here are a few perspectives. This is what you see as you're approaching the project from King Street. You're looking down towards the low-line park system beyond through the billboard. The housing authority's properties are on the right. Next, please. Here's a view as you continue down that approach. Next, please. Another view of you can kind of with these perspective views, I think you get a little bit better idea how the massing is broken up. Some of the balconies are additive, some of them are integrated behind the facades on some of the other views you'll see. Next, please. This is a better view to see some of that. Some of the balconies are hidden within the brick planes. Some of them are additive elements. Next, please. View from the overpass of what you'd see when not obscured by the billboard. Next, please. And one more final view of the project. Next, please. And this is a view from the low line park system, looking back at the project. And then I think we have some landscape slides that we'd like to briefly go over as well. And I think we need to switch to Stephen with remark if that's possible.
Okay.
Oh, quickly, one thing we didn't discuss the context. So F and H Street are kind of interesting in the fabric of Charleston. They've never historically connected two neighborhoods. They've always been dead end streets, and that was kind of with the housing authority's projects being built in the 80s. That made it a little bit even more difficult to connect through there. So I'm personally excited about the opportunity for this project to work and address that connection. Yeah, I think that's it. And we also have some images of the porch fabric of Charleston that we'd like to emulate in some fashion on this project. Thank you. I think we can switch to Stephen with remark real quickly.
I don't see Stephen on here, but if he is, what's his last name? I'm sorry.
D'Amato.
I found him. Okay, he's coming.
Hey guys, this is Steven. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So as Brian was saying, we're really just trying to focus on the overall connection from King Street to the low line. We currently just show on this slide the overall survey. We can go to the next slide. This is just some precedent imagery that we use from around town, some of our past projects, such as the Pacific Box and Crate Factory in the top left. Moving down the page, bottom left corner is paying homage to the railroad that the low line kind of mimics, using the same materials that were found through there and bring them into our site. Next slide. This is an overall rendered plan focusing on really just showing the materials of the circulation areas as you move through the site. Next slide for some enlargements. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a circulation study that we showed from King Street to the low line through our site, and then ultimately back to the low line. Next slide. We have a couple enlargement plans, so we'll go to those right now. Enlargement 1 shows the main entrance to the building. Again, we show, per what Brian was saying, we show that connection to F Street. And then moving through as you get towards the billboard, we wanted to focus on creating that overall plaza space where residents and the public can access it and use it as they will or as they like. Next slide. This is the type of planting we showed. We really wanted to maximize the overall green spaces and how it connects to the native landscapes of the Low Country. Next slide. This is the courtyard. We really just wanted to give the residents of the property somewhere to go and hang out. We have a overall arrival terrace, letter A, stepping down to our courtyard space. as you move towards the bottom right of the page, towards King Street, we really wanted to keep that open to allow for some future connection to the low line. Next slide. This is just showing the overall plan or conceptual plan for the types of plants we would use, all native to the Low Country. Next slide. This is the area for the parking underneath the overpass. We would have, as found elsewhere within the city of Charleston, an asphalt drive with gravel parking spaces to allow for positive drainage. And then again, we show that connection from King Street through our site and ultimately leading to the low line and to the apartment complex. One thing to mention is the application of these columns found throughout Charleston. We've seen that there have been murals painted on these columns, and we would like to move forward with providing that same type of application within our site. Next slide. As Brian mentioned, the only area that is along fronts King Street is this area within our site. And one comment made at the TRC meeting was to screen this area. So on the previous slide, we showed some sort of fence that is slightly opaque, but still cuts down on the overall lights from the vehicles, as well as this slide that shows the plants that we would use that are durable, native to the Low Country, and would soften that fence as well. Next slide. This is an overall elevation of the main plaza area at the entrance of the building, just showing how we broke up those areas while still providing some or maximizing the green space. Next slide. And then this is just an overall kind of inspiration for the plant palette that we would be using for the project. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you very much for that from the applicant. What do we have in the way of public comment, Ms. Parrish?
Sorry, we have Ms. Erin Minigan.
All right, Ms. Minigan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Erin Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant for meeting with us and walking us through this proposal. There is a pressing need for affordable and workforce housing in Charleston, and we are highly supportive of the proposal to introduce a significant number of affordable units in the heart of downtown. There are many positive aspects to this project. In particular, we like the way the massing is broken down between the 5- and 4-story portions, as well as the breaks in plane along the elevations to create vertical proportions. However, the building overall feels quite flat, and we appreciate the applicant's receptiveness to our suggestions to study the following areas to address this issue. First, the building has an overabundance of punched openings. We would recommend introducing enhanced detailing to the windows and simplifying fenestration types to create a more rational, consistent pattern across elevations rather than having several different window types. In particular, we don't find the asymmetrical windows with the L-shaped hardy framing successful. In the same vein, we don't find the extension of the brick frame out around the porches successful and feel the porches would be better with a more traditional treatment. We would also suggest studying creating a better distinction between the building's base, middle, and top. Perhaps by better defining the ground floor with a different treatment and introducing a more defined, substantial cornice at the top of the building. The ground floor also feels very recessed and dark, and we would suggest creating a more friendly, inviting ground level, especially considering this building will one day be facing the low line. Finally, in looking at the site plan, we are concerned by the placement of the trash enclosure near the center of the property that is in close proximity to many residential structures, including the adjacent neighborhood. And we would suggest studying a more sensitive, inconspicuous location. Due to issues primarily related to architectural direction, we feel the project should be deferred for further study and refinement before moving forward to the next phase of review, but look forward to working with the applicant to move the project in a positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minigan. Further public comment, Ms. Parrish.
So there is no other registered public members that are pre-registered to speak. I do have a Mr. Brandon screen's so small, Lilienthal, that has raised his hand. So I just promoted him to panelist to see if I don't know if he's with the applicant team or not.
No, I'm not. I'm just good afternoon. I'm Brandon Lilienthal, 24 H Street. And I just had I guess a polls of the entrance and exit of the complex.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lilienthal.
Yeah, when I attended the neighborhood association meeting, it was proposed that the entrance you come through the entrance on F Street and you exit on H Street. I wanted to know if that was still the plan, and if not, if so, I wanted to oppose due to the streets on the houses in this neighborhood are only provide street parking, which would prevent, which would cause a lot of issues if you've ever come on H and I and F Street, due to the restaurants and the customers parking back here already generates an issue due to residents parking back here. And also with children, the safety concern with children riding their bikes in the neighborhood would also deem a risk for potential injury. And so I just oppose of that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lilienthal. And I gather part of what you said is posed as a question. I'm going to let, if they choose, the applicant to respond to your specific question about access during their rebuttal period. So thank you for your comment. Ms. Parrish, anything further?
That is all the public comment.
Okay. Let's see, city and staff comments and recommendations.
Okay. We have 3 staff comments. The first one is in reference to the punched openings. Confirm the depth of the recess of the punched openings between the outside face of brick and the hardy siding, as this is critical for the design intent of a plane with punched openings. Staff feels a minimum of 8 inches would be sufficient. Number 2, while the proposed location at the terminus of H Street is not ideal, if after exhausting all other options for locating the dumpsters, it is determined that the proposed location is best, enhance the dumpster enclosure and or screening mechanisms as much as possible to improve its appearance. And 3, a parking lot on King Street would typically be screened with a low wall. The proposal calls for fencing of a horizontal nature with vegetation. Though the parking area is under Interstate 26, the screening method should be upgraded to a more urban condition. Additionally, screening should be extended closer to the entry drive and turned east to provide better screening of the parking end of the equipment. We're recommending conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. I'm going to, the applicant, if they didn't know it, has up to 5 minutes to either clarify or rebut anything in either public comments or staff comments. You all heard Ms. Lilienthal's question. To the extent you can answer it, that would be helpful, and any other response that the applicant would like to give. Thank you.
Okay, can I speak to that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Fessler.
Okay. In terms of street access, we are proceeding with the direction given by the city, but it needs to be understood that unless the housing authority approves that, it will not happen because it's not a public street. They have a lot of say over whether that is going to happen or not. And currently the housing authority is opposed to that connection. So that is something that our team and the city will have to work through. Our intent is to proceed with the direction that the city gave us when we awarded this project, which was to connect those 2 streets. But that may not happen depending on what the housing authority wants and the community feedback from the neighborhood, which we've heard some of that today. From a fire safety standpoint, I would think it would make a lot of sense to connect those streets, but I hear the concerns about safety and access, but also keep in mind that the low-line park system will be coming online here in the next few years, and having a short direct connection to that would certainly be a benefit to the residents of F and H Street. In regards to the dumpster, That one is a challenge. Our team has really struggled with that one. Our first choice was to locate that under the DOT overpass, but DOT will not permit that as an option. So we have limited other options. And from what we've studied, we feel this is the best and most appropriate spot for it. We can certainly look at other options and find ways to screen that additionally. And it is certainly an improvement over the dumpster situation that currently exists behind the housing authority's property, which is just, we've created a lot more order to that space behind there, which I think is an improvement to the community. The fencing along King Street is also another challenge. Our proposal, I agree with the city's comments about extending it and looking into study it more. One of the challenges we're running into is it's DOT property, and they have some limitations on what we can do, particularly in terms of deep foundations for our brick wall. So we are proposing a lighter type of fencing currently that would block the headlights, but still, and also help promote some safety and security for the residents in that parking lot, which is a concern as well. Having a more urban front there may not be the most appropriate solution for that. So, but we're open to studying other options to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fessler.
All right, Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes.
ask Mr. Fessler?
Of course.
I just want to clarify to Mr. Lilienthal's question. In fewer words, this could end up being accessed through F and H Street. Is that correct?
Correct. There could be a connection where you could have a vehicle, a bicycle, or a pedestrian walk through this property to gain access to the low line or gain access back out to King Street. That's what the current proposal proposes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further board comments?
Mr. Chairman, did you say you're ready for board comments?
I am.
I'm realizing when I studied this building is at an entrance to the city. You will be staring at it at the curb. So it's an important building. The materials to be used should represent that, which hopefully would lead to low maintenance. This building definitely overwhelms adjacent structures. There's no question about that. And if I think about the effect this project will have on adjacent structures or neighborhoods, it's important for me to know what the access to this project is going to be and where it's going to come from. So from what I have heard tonight, I would not be not being supportive of conceptual approval tonight without some additional information.
Yeah, and as you know, normally I hold my remarks till last rules chairman, but I am going to piggyback on what Mr. Metters has said. In defense of our applicant tonight, I've heard a lot of considerations that don't have anything to do with height, scale, and mass, but are going to dealing with some very practical and technical issues, basic site plan issues, basic access issues, etc. And I certainly understand that. I also understand the impetus to get affordable housing built, certainly something we all support. I'm saying that even though it's not really germane to our proceedings. What I'm saying what I'm detecting from the applicant is that there's still a lot up in the air in terms of us being able to give conceptual approval for height, scale, and mass and general architectural direction, when frankly, some things that are very significant could change that affect the neighborhood. And so I would not vote for a denial at this point, but I would vote for a deferral on the basis that we need more information. I think the applicant frankly needs more information. I'm making it clear. I don't think that this is their fault. I think that they've got to they're dealing with a lot of public authorities who have got to address some foundational concerns before we're in the best position to do our best advisory work. And I see Mr. Metters nodding along with that. Further board comments?
Well, I'll chime in, and it sounds like we might not be comfortable with approving it tonight because of those sort of outstanding items. And but I do want to add some comments so that the applicant at least can get a little bit of board discussion. I don't know that I agree with the Preservation Society's take on adding a base and a cornice and changing all the windows, because it takes it from one language that the architect's trying to do into a more traditional language, which they're clearly not trying to do. But I do agree with the Preservation Society's take, and with this ties into what the city was saying, is that it does feel very flat. There's a building very similar to this on Meeting Street, and it's too flat, and we can kind of stand there and look at it. And I think for this sort of concept to work, there needs to be a significant play between this panelization of the brick and whatever material it is. If it's hardy plank, it needs to be a stronger difference. And the city said at least 8 inches. I would say more. I mean, I think for this to feel like a rich building, it needs to have more of that depth. I think what Mr. Metters is saying is he wants to see better materials and all these things, and I don't disagree, but I think these materials could work if they're just handled better. And I don't think it's starting over or anything like that. I just think that this idea would work better if there were deeper recesses. There's a richer approach, I guess. And I would say I don't live here. I know that neighborhood fairly well. I totally understand what the neighbor said. It's very tough if you're driving around in there. It's very narrow, and I get all that. But I would say that from sort of the BAR's point of view, like Mr. Metters said, the primary impact this building is going to have, again, notwithstanding the people living right there, will be what you see on I-26. And that goes back to my original comment too, that I think it will feel very flat if there's not more study done and how that sort of panelization works. And so I would just encourage the applicant, especially from the viewpoint of I-26, to really think about how to make sure it doesn't feel flat and unwelcoming. And I think it's okay for it to be more contemporary. I just think it needs to be handled well. I think overall the direction, I don't have a major issue with it. I just think that's sort of a next level thing. And I don't understand why the dumpster, I mean, we're talking about a dumpster at conceptual approval. I don't understand why the dumpster just couldn't move over to a different parking area and not be the first thing you see when you drive in off of King. There must be something more to that, because I know the architect would have moved it there. So hopefully that can be solved some other way. Last thing I was going to say, I don't think a giant cornice ought to be necessarily added to this, because again, I think that's contrary to how you're approaching it. But the top of this building ought to have some type of detail. It can be very modern, move, but I don't know that just a brick and a typical 2-inch, 4-inch coping piece is going to cut it. I think it needs to be really addressed. Again, kind of going back to what James was saying, that we really need some richness in the detailing and how some of this is handled. So I would all of these are a little beyond conceptual, maybe not the depth stuff, but I think if they are going to come back, if this does get deferred tonight, I would encourage those kinds of studies to be done before they come back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bello. Further board comments?
This is Yeda. And actually, I like this building. So we all have this kind of subjective views on it, but from board staff point of view and listening to all the comments, I agree with most of it. I think it's just trying to get a contemporary buildings, and you can see those types of designs lately all over the Europe, by the way. And but Charleston is again is different, and flatness on that, but probably transitions between the materials and shadow and cornices and all that needs to be looked at, and that is everything else what site related problems and questions everybody has. So I'm pretty much in agreement with everybody else, even so I do like it. So
Well, I do want to add now, I don't want to say that I'm not in support. I think the design I like the design. I just think, again, to me, it's not a conceptual issue, it's sort of next level of how it's handled. So no, I don't think, I mean, I do like I like the way the building's broken down. The massing is very successful to me, especially on the site. And I like the approach. I just think, you know, I'm not opposed to conceptual approval, but if it's a concern because there's too much going on that's unknown, I don't want to disregard that. One last thing, and I promise I'll be quiet. The issue of a mural underneath the highway, those images that, I'm sorry, I forgot the guy's name from Remark, but I am fully in support of that. And if you need somebody from the BAR, even though I'm only a lowly alternate, to help your case, I would support really broader than just the column. I mean, I love those images where you're showing the painting, you know, on the underside of the overpass. I think that if it's handled well, could be really, really nice down there. So just one person in support of that.
I'll second that, Eddie. I think that's a good observation.
yeah, we need to. I keep calling this a public art, and we need more of that. We really do.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Metters.
Make a motion to defer conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. Is there a second?
I'll second it, but James, can you just to help the applicant, is the main concern the access issues on the site? Is that what you're hesitant to give it approval about?
No, Eddie, I am most concerned with what I'm going to see coming up 26 from the east heading into downtown Charleston. And I don't have confidence yet that this building is the building that I'd like to see as the first primary structure. And you slow down to make that curve. And it's obviously a very visible, which is why a double billboard is there. You know, it's just incredibly important. And it doesn't feel to me like that building yet.
So, okay, that's good. That helps me. I'm just trying to help the applicant. So is it the overall design approach, or does it need just some restudy? I want them to be able to come back and know what to do before they do. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to, because I'm not super clear. You just think it's not enough? Is that your thought? It's not worthy of its site as a gateway kind of building?
Andy, I think I've said all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I will second Mr. Metters I'm not as to the motion. Mr. Bellows can decide if he's going to withdraw a second, although I think it's made, so we probably need to vote on it as the parliamentarian. Be that as it may, I will say that I share Mr. Metters' concern of the relationship of this particular site to the skyline as you approach it from the interstate. But I do want to state that my original concern and reason for deferral is the issues that we've spoken about with TRC and access and the housing authority, I think present some very practical constraints that are not necessarily the fault of the presenters, but I do think those matters need to be rectified and clear before we give conceptual approval to something that may still have basic access and life safety issues. Again, that's outside our purview, but based on what the applicant has stated tonight, I have concerns about height, scale, mass, general architectural direction, if that's going to have to significantly change due to things that are constraints that are currently beyond the control of the presenters. And so that being said, are you still stand on your second, Mr. Bello?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. There's been a first and second. I'll proceed to call the roll, or there's been a motion in a second to defer conceptual approval, incorporating board and staff comments. I'll proceed to call the roll. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote on this motion?
Well, yay in favor.
Mr. Bello?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yay in favor.
And myself, yay in favor. All right. Ms. Parrish, agenda item number 9.
All right, we are moving on to 45 Romney Street. This request is for some exterior modifications, including patio roof structures. This one is in the East Central neighborhood in the Historic Corridor District. Got an aerial for you here. The building location is outlined in the red box. Romney Street is just above it on the page. This is an older photo, but this is the site, and we're standing in Romney Street right here when we took it. Some more images of the site. This is the side that the patio structures are proposed for. This is looking across Romney Street. This is next to the building we just saw. This is on the other side of Romney Street also. We can skip this page. I've been studying it for a few minutes. Not applicable. All right, and with this one, we've got Mr. Justin Fate.
Thank you, everyone, for hearing our application. I'm representing the owner, Leor Evan. Again, this is 45 Romney, and the proposed structures are facing Hanover Street. That's the west side of the metal warehouse building. There are some more current photos in the submittal to show you the, all gray nature metal building, metal roof, metal gutters, black aluminum storefront, windows, doors, and garage doors. Some changes have been made since this was approved by the BAR. We've added some garage doors. Those approvals happened at staff level. So you'll see some differences between the approved and proposed elevations, but those are already approved. We're really just asking for approval of the patio structures. We're intending to essentially utilize and activate the large patio in front of the building on Hanover Street. We hope that, this will enhance street life in front of the two restaurants, tenants 1 and 3 in the building. The proposal is essentially a LVL wood structure with heavy timber columns and an exposed metal roof. The connections are all exposed, heavy duty metal. We're proposing to paint those black if they're not already black. And the one change to the submittal would be within the structural documents. After speaking to the fire marshal, we need to change what is called out as 2x8 roof joists need to become 3x8 minimum. And I think that summarizes the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment, Ms. Parrish?
There's no public comment.
Not surprised. City staff comments and recommendations.
Okay, one comment. Several changes have been proposed. I'm sorry. Several changes have been proposed since this project was last seen at the board for review. These primarily were on the wall openings on the west elevation. Some simple variations in the glazing were approved by staff, and some are newly proposed. This application is in for board review as the sum of changes has become substantial when compared to the previous final board approval. The newest proposal for patio coverings is appropriate for the project, and the proposed materials benefit the material palette already used on the building. We're recommending final approval of the exterior modifications with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. Any response, Justin? You don't have to if you don't need to.
Yeah, I don't think I need, no need to. Thank you for the staff comments.
Thank you, sir. We'll then move to board comments, the potential vote on this agenda item. What do my fellow board members have to say about agenda number 9 on Romney Street?
Mr. Chairman, it's I'm fine with what they're proposed to do. It's very difficult for me to understand how more and more money can continue to be spent on this building when it's in a flood zone. And when it was initially looked at, it was a question about whether it was going to reach the 50% rule and be able to be used or not. And it just appears that some nice, high quality changes have been made and approved at staff level. And I saw Eddie's email to Tori kind of asking, why is this coming? And it was the aggregate of all these changes. But it is not under my purview and our purview, and I understand that, but I can't quite figure out how they can continue to invest money in this and not have reached the point where the building either has to be raised or floodproof. I don't understand that.
As duly noted, and Mr. Metters, you've qualified your own remarks by saying that it may not be germane, and I'm sure you would not incorporate those into the merits of the aesthetic presentation we have this evening, but they're duly noted. Further board comments.
I've got a couple comments, and just to echo what James has said, I know it's not germane, but I've watched this project when it was just a couple of columns. I don't know how in the world this isn't over 50% of the value, but be it as it may. I have no issue with adding a porch to this. I think it's appropriate. And but I'm not prepared to approve this. I'm okay with conceptually approving it or something and letting staff handle. I love the images the architects included of this beautiful stained wood and these wonderful little details, but the structural drawings don't match that at all. So I would ask that the architect and the structural engineer get together. It seems to me they don't match. I could be wrong. But if I would ask the architect and the structural engineer to provide drawings that match those beautiful little photos you submitted and let staff approve those. Because I think, and I could be wrong, you might be in there and I just missed it, but it does not look like you don't have the beam shown. You don't have the connection at the top like the one in the photo, and the one at the bottom I don't think is the same. It looks like it's a typical column seat, and which would be, doesn't sound like that's the architect's intent, but that's not what the structural guy is saying. So I just think those two need to be coordinated. So I would be in support of the idea of this. No issues with a shed roof. It makes sense to me. But I think the detailing needs to be, I think, what the architect intends, not what the structural engineer has shown.
Thank you, Mr. Bella. Further board comments.
So I guess if I hear you correctly, the final approval is not appropriate yet. We can approve that idea and concept, but they still need to work with staff to finalize detailing and and meet the idea again. So it's kind of strange little project that's on and off, and we're still spending time on it. So I'm in agreement. No.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll make a motion.
Well, Eddie,
again.
let me ask you a quick question right quick.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Is it appropriate for us to have as part of our motion that Tori makes an inquiry about the process at building inspections, I don't know the right way to frame it.
I think the question that you're driving at, Mr. Metters, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, is we want to make sure that the plans, the architect's plans, conform to the engineer's specs, is what I'm hearing at this point.
Yes, but also that there hasn't been a gap somehow between building inspections and BAR in terms of when projects have been ongoing and been approved at staff level. Have new permits been taken out, which have added to this aggregate total of dollars, which is not under our purview, but just as a communication. It happens sometimes that communication might not happen. I don't know.
Let me pose that as a question to Tori, and whether Tori knows of any discrepancy and or gap between the various plans that have been presented, if she can speak to that and what she's reviewed at staff level. And what I would say is germane is for staff to confirm that the plans are in conformity with what has been previously approved by the city's various public authorities. I think that's completely within, that's germane to this board and to Ms. Parrish's job. So Tori, to the extent you can answer James' questions about what you know about any plans or what has in fact been permitted, you can speak to that. If not, it sounds like we're ready to move ahead.
Sure. So here's what I can answer. I can't open all these really quickly, but there was a permit in November. It looks like there's several activities involved on this project, on this location. I know that Lawrence, if he wants to speak, has talked about some of the fenestration and approved some of the staff review of some fenestration changes. But I would be more than happy to check up on this and check with building inspections.
Well, and the reason I say that is, again, I'm not giving the applicant a hard time at all. I'm just making sure we're on the same page. We were talking about the fire marshal indicating that there was some question about framing. Again, to the extent that the plans are something that we've reviewed and that might change things, I think that's noteworthy for staff to follow up on. If it's visible and contributes to the structure. Yeah.
Just to provide, we're a little bit talking off topic, but I do think it relates to this board's review. And just to clarify, there's a couple of the things we're talking about. One is what I brought up about the applicant's current application not really jiving with his details. And I am in support of conceptual approval, and I'll make a motion for staff to work that out with the applicant because I think that's easy. The second issue, which James brought up, it has to do with building inspections and permit approval for this property, which affects us because the scope is what the board reviews. But have they gone beyond with all, there's only a certain amount that they're allowed to do to this property before they have to bring it up to code, FEMA code. And that's not this board's.
I understand. And that's why I said earlier with James' comments, for purposes of making any decision or incorporating any decision, that's not going into our thought process, et cetera. And Mr. Metter self-censored in saying, I understand this isn't germane, I just had a question. So we're excluding all that, but we are saying to the extent that the BAR reviews and approves plans, to the extent that there's inconsistency in those plans, to the extent that there may be some disagreement, gap, or anomaly between a set of engineered plans and architect's plans, that needs to be resolved by staff. But conceptually, we are approving, or I think we're going to approve Mr. Bellows' motion, and I assume incorporating staff comments and board comments this evening. We're going to conceptually approve this, but we're agreeing that staff needs to do follow-up on this, right? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, because what it could be, I don't hope this isn't the case for the applicant, but it could be that this addition triggers them going over 50%, and then they're in trouble with building inspections. Maybe not. I think
Could they have and I'm sorry, they have received a certificate of occupancy on December 2nd, which the applicant can speak to. It would seem to me like it kind of closes that chapter of the previous work, and now we're talking about new work.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
Ms.
I'm-
Parrish, if you say that's the case, then
Well,
that's fine by me.
I'm happy for Justin to speak on that.
Okay, yeah, I didn't want to speak out of turn. Forgive me, I forget the rules. But
That's all right. Now that you've kind of been called on by the board.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Yep. This structure detached and an outside improvement is not part of the 50% rule. It's one of the exclusions. So just speaking about this proposal, I can confirm that this would not count towards the 50% rule.
Thank you. And thank you for that, your clarification of understanding. I think between the two of those, we kind of put the issue to bed and just need to make sure staff has followed up on any inconsistencies that are relevant to our purview in what's been presented. Mr. Bello, your motion, as I understood it, well, how about, would you mind restating your motion since we've had
Sure.
our back?
I'll move for conceptual approval with board and staff comments to just have the detailing proposed by the architect matched by the structural engineer's drawings, so that they are consistent with final details to be reviewed by staff.
Mr. Bello, your motion, as I understand it, is for approval of incorporating board and staff comments, ensuring that the architect's detailing and the engineer's plans conform and with appropriate follow-up by staff. Is that correct?
Conceptual approval.
That's right. Well, I mean, Mr. Bello, was it conceptual approval or was it final approval of exterior modifications? Incorporating board and staff comments.
I don't want them to have to come back to the board because I think it's just a little bit of work that the architect and engineer have to do. So it could be final approval with those details resolved at the staff level. How about that?
Okay. So final approval of exterior modifications with board and staff comments incorporated, ensuring that the architect's details and the architect detail and the engineer's drawings conform to each other with appropriate follow-up and staff approval.
Yes, thank you.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Bello and a second. I'll proceed to call the roll. Mr. Metters, how do you vote on this motion?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Bello,
Yay in favor.
and myself, yay in favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I have to recuse myself on agenda item number 10. Before I pass the shoe, did we resolve who was willing to be chairman for a few minutes?
Eddie, go ahead and do it, Eddie.
I'm only an alternate. I don't know how to do that.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. With someone
Thank you,
accepting doing that, I will remove myself. But before I do and pass it to Mr. Metters, thank you all for your work this evening, and thanks as always for the hard work of staff.
Thanks, Mr. Robinson.
Well, and happy holidays.
Oh, and yes, happy holidays and Merry Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Okay, Tori.
Okay, agenda item number 10 is 330 Concord Street. This request is an after the fact approval request for the guardhouse changes and demolition of a pergola structure. This is at Gadsden Wharf and it's within the old and historic district. We've got an aerial for you here. This is the, it's Gadsden Borough Park right there where the hand is. And then that's the tower and the red box. And this work is at the entry drive into the property. This is an older photo. This shows the pergola and the vine trellis that existed at the property. The little guardhouse is kind of tucked away in there. You can see that. Some more images of that. I'm looking north, the project's off to your right. And looking south. So for this one, we have Mr. Peter Ward. And he has been promoted to panelist.
Mr. Ward?
Here he comes.
Okay. Should be able to hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. And we appreciate the board hearing this application for repairs to our guardhouse at 330 Concord Street. My name is Peter Ward. I live at 330 Concord Street, and I'm the vice president of the board of directors of the Dockside Association, who owns the property. So over the last several years, the Concord Street entrance to Dockside has been impacted by flooding on Concord Street at times of extreme high tides from the lack of backflow, damage to the guardhouse caused by flooding from storms and high tide events, damage to the guardhouse upper structure caused by trucks passing through the gate, damage to the overhead trellis caused by repeated hits from trucks, particularly from refuse and recycling trucks that are wide and high, and the presence of pests in the overhead trellis and wisteria. In addition, there have been repeated instances of moving and delivery trucks not being able to access the property because of height restrictions, causing inconvenience and added additional cost to residents. The company providing on-site security services has complained that environmental conditions inside the guardhouse, water incursion, rotting floors, were becoming a potential health and safety hazard to the guards. In October 2020, the overhead trellis was severely damaged by a delivery vehicle and was in imminent danger of collapse. To prevent further damage and or injury to people, the trellis was removed as a matter of health and safety. And go to the next. Once the trellis was removed, it was clear that the guardhouse, without the shrouding of the trellis and the wisteria, and because of health and safety concerns, had to be replaced or repaired. The initial thinking of the association was to replace the guardhouse with an all-new structure, either designed and built in place or prefabricated and installed by a qualified supplier. However, we were informed that the lead time for design and fabrication of a pre-built structure conforming to city hurricane resistance code was several months. The association then chose to repair the existing guardhouse without altering the exterior appearance. At the same time, the association was advised that the replacement for the HVAC cooling unit on top of the tower structure should be scheduled for the 2024-2025 timeframe. The cooling unit is a large piece of equipment that must be hoisted onto the tower roof, and that can only be accomplished using an extra wide and tall crane. Formerly, before the International African American Museum was built, we could have accessed the property from next door in that vacant parking lot that was there, but the museum's there, so the only way to get a crane in is to demolish the guardhouse and bring the crane in alongside the building on the south side of the property. So this reinforced the decision to repair the existing guardhouse, and as part of the repair, we removed the old leaking sliding glass doors on the side of the guardhouse and replaced the doors with sliding windows. In place of the side doors, we installed a single entrance door in the back on the river side of the structure. This removed a possible safety hazard for the guards, keeping them away from vehicle traffic when entering and exiting the guardhouse. This also eliminated another hazard. The curb between the guardhouse side doors and the driveways is less than the 3 feet required by the current code. We also installed a new floor 7 inches higher than the old floor to help protect the interior from flooding. We also replaced the front glass as it was cracked. The guardhouse was given a fresh coat of paint with the same colors as used previously. One defect that had existed for years and not easily corrected is the concrete pad on which the guardhouse sits. It is slightly out of level as a result of the ground settling over the years, possibly as a result of street flooding. This will be corrected when a new guardhouse is installed after the replacement of the cooling unit. In advance of replacing the cooling unit in a few years, Dockside will be preparing for the replacement of the guardhouse. At that time, we will prepare architect's drawings and seek approval for a new guardhouse designed to meet city code for hurricane wind resistance. And as part of that process, we will seek BAR approval for the appearance of the new guardhouse. In the last several months, Dockside has decided that allowing pedestrians to use the vehicle entry and exit lanes on the front Concord Street gate is also a potential safety hazard. Accordingly, Dockside engaged Outdoor Spatial Design of North Charleston to design a new pedestrian access which keeps people out of the vehicle lanes, yet which is architecturally pleasing and consistent with Charleston design. parish may recall her comments that the new pedestrian access will be a positive addition for these residents. And here's the rendering of the new guardhouse. Outdoor spatial design on Dockside's behalf has responded to BAR concerns about the original design by eliminating the Dockside name lettering on the top of the gate in favor of an ornate garden wrought iron detail with no lettering, addressing the use of low-level safety-based uplighting, and describing the use of an inobtrusive access control system by Sonatrol as is used on existing vehicle gates. We are awaiting BAR response to this application and are ready to proceed. So at this point in time, we're asking for approval of the repair of the guardhouse is actually what we're looking for. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions the staff or the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Are there any questions for Mr. Ward from board members? And if not, is there any written or public comment?
There is, we have two members of the public who have registered to speak. We will start with Margaret, Miss Margaret Dillard. She's coming on the call. And then we'll have Mr. Douglas Berlinski. Miss Dillard?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my only comment is that I just want to see something that is more suitable for the quality of our community at Dockside. And I understand the reasons that Mr. Ward has indicated for repairing a crooked slab. They should have built the building such that the roof was level. The roof is unlevel and the building is unsightly. And to have it stand as it is for the next 3 years, I think is not in keeping with the quality of our community that I know Mr. Ward is working really hard to to continue. But the guard shack was just a real miss. And so I would hope that there's some way to enhance it to make it look good so that the residents of the nearby community and our community can be proud of the entrance, and it can have some sort of a Charleston flair. So those will be my comments.
Thank you. And Tori, we had someone else.
And we had Mr. Berlinski. I'll promote him again.
Yes, Douglas Berlinski. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. I'm also a resident at Dockside, and the current guard shack as it sits, I was just in Florida and I was leaving the airport rental car kiosk, and it reminded me of that, except ours is not plumb. The eastern wall and window in no way resembles the old guard shack, and the south and north side of the guard shack where the sliding doors existed now have each 2 windows, and those walls in no way resemble the previous guard shack. And the rear also was a large window, and now is a door and a HVAC unit that is set up high that also in no way resembles the old guard shack. The roof also is not in sync with the old roof, and it actually leans towards the south, towards the museum that's currently under construction. And it, in my opinion, is really not of the level that we want to present to our residents and the community. The logic behind the coolant tower, which was replaced around 2005, the previous coolant tower lasted us much longer than 18, 19 years, which would put that another 3 years out. If it's maintained, I know that's based on a study, but it could be 8, 10 years from now before we need a coolant tower. And to have that as our guard shack for that many years, to me, is not temporary. And as far as access, I understand where Mr. Ward's coming from with if we were putting back a trellis and so forth, but 18-wheelers on many occasions when needed were getting through the previous drive, granted a tight clearance, but doable, and monitoring sometimes necessary, but doable. And
Mr. Belinsky, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap this up if you could.
Oh, sure. And options for that in the future could be, maybe a helicopter or just opening the wall up, which we've done in the past in projects, and not using the guard shack, but another form of entrance into dockside. Anyway, that's my humble opinion. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Tori?
That's all the public comment.
The city staff, your recommendations and comments?
All right, we have those. This application is submitted as an after-the-fact review for demolition work and exterior modifications to the existing guardhouse. Other work has been reviewed by staff, which is adjacent to this and includes landscaping, signage, and the addition of a new walkway, wall opening, and gate. Number 2, with the demolition of the arbor and vine trellis, the view from the public right-of-way has drastically changed. Additional unreviewed work on the guardhouse was also performed. At this time, the changes have become visually substantial. 3, understanding that large equipment is planned to be transported through this entry at some point in the future in 3 to 4 years. Board and staff should fully understand what replacement work is proposed for the entry and an appropriate timeline for the entry to remain as is and to be sufficiently upgraded. Alternately, work is to be proposed, reviewed, and take place in the near future, with the equipment being placed at the later date by other means. So to kind of frame it all up, our recommendation is deferral with submission of conceptual design package of replacement work within 90 days.
Thank you. Mr. Ward, you have 5 minutes to respond to the staff comments or any of the public comments.
Thank you. I need to review the staff comments in more detail. This started out as I said before, as a need to respond to the health and safety of the property, of people going in and out of the property to get rid of the trellis. And as I said, it's been damaged. There was pests in there, the wisteria, and repairing the guardhouse was driven in large part, almost entirely, by health and safety considerations to keep the guards out of the driveway on a narrow walkway, to give them a better floor and space to work in and a more pleasant working environment. So we'll follow the staff recommendation, but I would just like to add that the entire driving force here was health and safety, and this board, the board of directors here, works with and conforms to the recommendations of experts, and experts have told us that the appropriate way to put equipment on the roof is to use a very large crane, not using a helicopter. That's the guidance we've been given. The guidance we were given with regard to being able to make the building, the structure, the guardhouse structure, safer for the occupants and the walkway safer for our pedestrians is what we're all about. So we'll follow the recommendations, but I think I would ask that the board consider that we wanted to do the right thing for the health and safety of both our residents and our employees.
Mr. Ward, thank you very much. And thanks to all those who made comments. Board discussion and vote.
All right, well, I'll start. I think everybody's kind of ready to wrap up the meeting. And I appreciate the concern about health and safety, but it's been a while since I've stood there in front of that drive, but I remember the trellis, and it was actually a pretty nice entrance to dockside there. This is an after the fact review, so it's really hard for us to support. I mean, it's already done, but typically you get a permit and you get VAR approval. So that didn't happen. I think there are a couple things. One, it always worries, I'm not making light of the the site issues with getting a large crane back there, but I hate to have the whole design held up because the truck might have to go back there in 4 years or something. So I think that, to me, at the very least, there should be a submittal made to address how the guardhouse looks now, so that it's better in something that the board or at least city staff could approve. And then I think, to me, it just seems like there ought to be a more holistic approach to that whole entry. There may be a way that you could put the guardhouse to shift it some so there's just enough room for a large crane type structure to get back there, paving. There could be a whole lot of things that connect the pedestrian, instead of just replacing, a guard shack. So it seems to me that short term, there could be something, that's going to last us 5-6 years at least, of a nice little element that addresses the street. It sounds like it would make the dockside folks happier. And then maybe there's a grander approach where that whole front area is thought about to help with the access and really to the pedestrian safety and just the aesthetics, how you this is visitors and residents' first thing they see when they pull into the building site. So anyway, that was a long way of saying I support the city's deferral because I don't know really what we're approving. So I would just ask that they come back with something that at least improves the guardhouse now, and then maybe the broader issue of solving access could be studied further. I get that a helicopter may not work, but I've seen, those cranes can get sometimes in some tight areas. So hopefully there's another solution. So anyway, I would support the city's deferral.
Thank you, Eddie. Luda?
Yeah, so this is a small structure and it can be designed that it can be picked up at the time of need, and moved for a few days or maybe a week and moved back. It's done with the much larger structures, and that's a possibility. So in the meantime, it can be designed, the whole area can be designed that to be pleasing and what the residents of that side are expecting, as well as a bystander like us. So I don't think that this one which is already there can be fixed and stays there for in the eyesore for this 3, 4, or maybe 5 years, who knows? But again, I just think there's a possibility and could be an interesting project. So I am in support of deferral.
Thank you, Luda. And which of you would like to make this motion?
Do you have any comments?
I agree with both of your comments completely.
Okay. All right. I can make a motion. Deferral with submission of conceptual design package of replacement work within 90 days with the well, that's kind of it.
So Luda, you've made a motion for deferral with submission of conceptual design package of replacement work within 90 days. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Eddie, thank you. Seconded. Is any further discussion? Luda, how do you vote on this?
Yay in favor.
Eddie?
Yay in favor.
And my vote is for yay in favor, so it's 90%, 100% approved. Eddie and Tori and Luda and everyone, thanks for your hard work. Lawrence, thank you. And I hope everyone has a great holiday.
Yeah, thank you, James.
Thanks for jumping on there, James.
Thank you, guys. Happy holidays.
Love you.
Yeah. Y'all have a great holiday.
You.